We'll call the Transportation and Environment Committee to order. We have a quorum with council members Perales and Esparza, along with myself. And I think the first thing we need to do is we have a Clean Energy Community Advisory Commission work plan that we need to defer. And if we could take that along with the consent calendar, I would entertain a motion. I guess we have, do we have comment on this item? Yes. Okay. Tessa Woodmansee.
The problem, Tessa Woodmansee, Stockton Avenues, City of San Jose. The new name for our community is called the Village of the Garden Alameda, which you're destroying, but that's another story. Okay, so what I'm here to talk about is this clean energy plan that you feel is saving us and that our mayor had to put out immediately after the county declared a climate emergency. And just to make a little step, I would like you to take notes about what I'm saying, okay? That is your job, okay, is to take notes. Because I've taken the effort to be here, okay? Because you don't answer the phones, you don't call us back. We know that, okay? That's how you're doing it. We need a grand jury to look at the way the city of San Jose is operating, because it's really corrupt, okay, and serving your masters, which are corporations, instead of the people, okay? You're not serving the people, Dev Davis, okay? So, on top of that, when I'm talking about clean energy, to be on topic, is that our city mayor, Sam Liccardo, immediately put out in the Mercury News about how sustainable the city of San Jose is after the county of Santa Clara declared a climate emergency. That was because he wanted to cover up for the ineptitudes that the city of San Jose has in terms of their clean energy. And one of Mayor Liccardo's main points of what he's doing for clean energy, hello, I'm here talking, excuse me, you need to get your paper out about notes about what I'm saying, okay? Thank you. And so basically what the Mayor Liccardo said about his clean energy, the work that he's doing is to make sure that PG&E cannot shut down our energy when there's a fire. And he didn't want PG&E to be able to do that. And he was going to make a coalition of, let's say, 25 members that are going to decide when we're going to shut down the energy. Because he did not realize that when he put us on the clean energy program that has the 18th floor and all the people working, millions of jobs and millions of this, corporations, was that the, basically that it was not off the grid. You were not off the grid. So that when that energy gets turned down, you're all your energy of our clean energy.
Your time is up.
So then we have solar on every rooftop. Decentralize our solar, not centralize.
I move approval of the work plan change.
Does that also include the consent calendar?
It did not, but I could include the consent calendar as well. So also approve the work plan and the consent calendar.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So we are going to move on to reports to committee. And we are on annual citywide fleet management report.
Thank you, Chair Davis and Transportation Environment Committee members. My name is Matt Kano, Director of Public Works, and with me is Walter Lynn, Deputy Director, Fleet Manager Dave Mesa, and Fleet Analyst Lori Scheibele. We're here today to present to you an annual report on our fleet program. It's a very exciting program that we get to be part of as someone coming from a department for over a decade that relied on this division for daily services. When I was in Parks and Rec, I realized how important it is and how important these functions are to every department that we work with. And we're really proud of the innovation that we continue to do over the years to make this a better and better program as we move it forward. And of course, over this past summer, I even had a stronger realization of the importance of the fleet division when I realized how important we are to power safety shutoff and how involved we are in providing generation and gasoline to generators and making sure our city can continue to survive in the event of a power shutoff or a major earthquake or other event. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Walter to provide part of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Matt. Chair Davis and members of the Transportation and Environment Committee meeting, I am Walter Lynn, Deputy Director for Public Works, overseeing the Fleet Management Division. I'd like to share with you just a few details about the program itself. Within our division, we have 55 staff members that manage the fleet operations within 8 different city sites throughout the city boundaries. Just a few examples of our sites going in clockwise motion, starting at the top. That is the Regional Wastewater Facility. That is a FECON vehicle that helps to clear and aerate sludge and other materials within the Regional Wastewater Facility. Moving to the right, that is the Mayberry Corporation Yard, where those are VACCON vehicles that help to remove fluids and debris from flooded or clogged areas. Next, we have fire apparatuses at the Central Service Yard. We then show police vehicles within our build-up shop at the police substation. Towards the bottom center, we have a pavement patch truck shown there at the South Corporation Yard. Additional police vehicles at our municipal police garage. And then rounding out the photos, we have a rubber eradicator at the airport. I'd like to share with you some descriptions of the categories and quantities of the vehicles that our Fleet Management Division procures, operates, and maintains. We now have approximately 2,800 vehicles and pieces of equipment within our inventory. Those include 1,530 light-duty vehicles, which include passenger vehicles, transport vehicles, police vehicles. We have medium-duty vehicles, upwards of 290 at this point, which examples there are service trucks. Heavy-duty vehicles, such as fire apparatuses and other heavy vehicles, we have about 200 within our inventory. And then for pieces of equipment, we are at 780, which includes emergency generators, heavy equipment, as well as amusement park rides, such as those at Happy Hollow Park and Zoo. I'd like to now transition this to David Mesa. He is our acting fleet manager. He will share some details in regards to the services that the division provides and the accomplishments as well.
Thank you, Walter. Last year, the Fleet Management Division performed 19,000 work orders, those being work orders that included preventative maintenance, repairs, and modifications to different fleet assets. We have a mobile service program that provides 24-hour mobile service to assist the fire department on scene for major incidents that requires fueling or repairs to different fire apparatus. We also provide mobile service to the amusement park rides at Happy Hollow. That is also 24/7 available. And we provide maintenance and repairs and fueling to the emergency generators located throughout the city. We currently have 6 fuel sites geographically positioned throughout the city, with a 7th one possibly in the works within the next year or two. Our fuel use continues to decrease year after year. We were down to 1.5 million gallons last year. We can attribute this to more fuel-efficient vehicles and electric vehicles. And last year, our acquisition and disposition buildup team managed 198 new vehicles and 176 retired vehicles. I'm going to highlight a few major accomplishments from 2018-19. That being, we completed the mechanics reclassification within the division. We also added 10 all-electric Proterra buses to the city's airport shuttle at Mineta Airport. We recommissioned the West Yard Fleet Facility to streamline operations for the DOT, one of our partner departments. And we also graduated 3 mechanics from our apprenticeship program. Some of the process improvements we've completed over the last couple of years: we enrolled our portion of our fleet into California's continuous testing smog program that allows for remote access smogging of light-duty vehicles. We are currently utilizing a life cycle cost analysis tool to make decisions on whether we should replace or remove vehicles from service. We're using data-driven fleet analytics through our asset management system that gives us real-time data for making the most efficient decisions within the city's fleet. And we're continuing to increase electrification of our fleet. Some of the current improvements that we are still working on would be expanding the city's electric vehicle charging infrastructure, streamlining our procurement process, updating the vehicle use policy, emergency management for the city, as well as expanding the telematics program. A few of the initiatives that we, the Fleet Management Division, are working on would be the green fleet policy, our fleet replacement policy, and emergency management, which I'll go over in the next few slides. So Fleet is currently collaborating with DOT to expand the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We've identified 5 sites throughout the city to add more charging ports that are be available for city fleet as well as for the citizens of the city of San Jose. We're continuing to expand our electric vehicle fleet where applicable. We're adding SUVs and medium-duty vehicles to that. We are working currently to update our green fleet policy as well as our vehicle policies. And we are also looking to expand our city motor pool over the next few years with various type of vehicles. With that, I'm going to pass to Lori.
Our vehicle replacement backlog, as reported on our 2019 Deferred Maintenance Infrastructure Backlog Report, is $9.3 million, which is our current unfunded need. $6.5 million of that is generally funded. Our largest category is our light-duty vehicles, and we currently have 738 of those. 352 of those are beyond the 10 years in service. Our average replacement age is 17.3 years. The replacement guideline for those light-duty vehicles is 10 years and 100,000 miles. Even though our staffing levels have decreased and it currently is an issue for us, our vehicle and equipment has increased. We are happy to say that our fleet availability has remained consistent at 97% through the last few years. And turning back to Dave.
So a few topics about emergency management. I'm going to be sharing this slide with Walter. The Fleet Management Division plays a crucial role in the EOC. Should there be an event that causes the EOC to be activated, we manage or help manage the logistics section. We also, again, like I stated earlier, we provide 24/7 mobile fueling services and backup power generation for critical city facilities. And currently, we are working on piloting a program to remotely monitor fuel level of those generators throughout the city should there be an emergency. I'm going to hand it off to Walter.
Yes, thanks, Dave. And as previously discussed, as we're working through preparing more emergency preparedness within the city, in particular for the PG&E public safety plant shutdowns, or as well as any other natural or unnatural type of event where we have sustained power outages. We've been working with our facilities and fleet teams to ensure that our most critical city facilities will maintain consistent power to provide those essential services to the community and to city staff providing those services. We've identified quite a bit of our emergency type of facilities, or critical facilities that provide those essential services. Within the 400 or so buildings that we maintain within our inventory, we've identified 129 that provide critical services. Of those 129, we have 32 that do not currently have backup generation or adequate backup generation. Those facilities we've been focusing on in terms of getting the infrastructure in place, identifying the needs, developing cost estimates, and really trying to ensure that for all of those facilities, from a fleet perspective, we do have that type of operation in place where we could refuel those generators as they get depleted, ensuring those consistent operations throughout those sites. Mobile fueling, again, we do have a deficiency within our fleet. Even though we do have mobile fueling trucks, we only have 4 of them, 2 of which are high capacity, 2 of them only can hold 100 gallons. As such, we've identified more of a needs for procurement of those vehicles, having those available. So in case these events happen, we'll be as best prepared to provide those services for those critical facilities. As Dave mentioned, we're also looking at generator remote monitoring. That'll allow us to look at a dashboard where the different levels of fuel within those generators we can monitor remotely and get those refueled as quickly as possible. It really helps us identify those critical needs, those areas within the city, and getting those priority routes in place. And with that, Dave will go over the last slide that we have.
So the last slide to wrap up, just real quick, the innovation and motivation are moving forward. Our staffing, we're looking at skill development. We've identified a need for some of our staffing to have more training, such as generator training, that will be useful in event of an emergency. We're also trying to align our staffing resources. We've continued to add vehicles to the fleet, but we haven't added any staffing in the last few years, so we're trying to add and align our resources to meet the needs of our customers. We are currently working on an updated vehicle procurement process to get our client departments their replacement vehicles in a more streamlined manner so that critical services aren't affected. And then we're continuing to utilize technology, whether it's through telematics and data management, to provide those services in a more reasonable amount of time. And with that, we'll open up for questions.
Thank you. We have one member of the public who would like to speak, Tessa Woodmansey.
Okay, so pay attention, take notes. We are in a climate emergency. You need to declare a climate emergency. And if not, there'll be a lot of ramifications because we are going down as a species. We are dealing with mass extinction. We can potentially have that. I was just listening with my husband in regards to that. Sea level rise is not the issue. It's, first of all, it's mass migration. That's what's happening right now. That's what's going to be happening. That's going to destabilize San Jose is mass migration. And that's what's happening. There are 60,000 people who are dire need of food in the Bahamas. 70,000 are homeless, are needing homes. So this is what's going to be happening. They're going to be going to Florida, then all the Floridians are going to be coming to San Jose. Okay, so we have a mass migration issue that we're facing. And we need to make massive changes. They're saying 18 months, okay? Did you get the email? 18 months to make radical changes in the way we're doing things. We need to create a world-class bicycle infrastructure, a separated bicycle infrastructure. The amount of fuel that you're using in your fleet has got to be reduced by 50%, okay? That's what the science is saying. It's called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, okay? That was 2018 that they told us we have 50%. I know, you're not listening. You're bored. I know. You think it's my personal problem. Both Raul and Deb Davis thinks it's my personal problem. It's not. It's we need to change, okay? We need to have a world-class bicycle infrastructure right away. You guys can all get electric bikes if you got to go to your meetings. That's the way it should become. That's the way our city needs to become, to be a beacon to the world. Car-free San Jose.
Thank you. To my colleagues, questions? Councilmember Perales.
Thank you very much. And only because you called me out, Tessa, I don't believe it's your personal problem. I do think it's all of our problems. It's just not as easy to fix as you might say it is. So, but I want to thank our staff for the report on our fleet. I can tell you it was surprising to see that carousels are included in the fleet. I don't know why I missed that the last several years. Oh, I wasn't on T&E, so that helps. But yeah, quite a wide range of fleet that we are managing, and I would have never assumed a carousel was in that mix. You know, oddly enough, just happened to ride that carousel this past weekend at the fundraiser at Happy Hollow, so it's working well. And I did have, I guess, a question here in regards to, I know that our largest fleet that we have is within the police department, and I was curious if somebody could expand a little bit on the opportunity with trying to get some alternative, kind of maybe fuel vehicles for the police department. I saw that in the report. See if we can expand on that.
So we currently have the CSO vehicles, which is part of the police department. They are in hybrid vehicles currently. This model year 2020, Ford has actually come out with a hybrid pursuit-rated police utility interceptor. We already have 2 of those on order for the police department to run through its paces in their EVOC course to see if they will go ahead and give us the blessing to continue to order more of those in the future, which would be our standard vehicle moving forward.
Do we know if any other departments are using them? And I know that a lot of departments try to use CHP as a standard.
So far this year, for this model year, Ford's reporting 17% of all the SUV interceptors that are being ordered with the hybrid package, and I am aware of San Diego County and the Los Angeles Police Department that have made 2 very large orders so far.
Okay, and is it our understanding that they, I'm assuming, did a similar kind of trial of them
Yes,
before?
they did run them through their EVOC courses, and they signed off on them as well. In
Okay,
fact,
interesting.
The
That's-
officers were very impressed with the handling of them.
Yeah, no, that's positive to hear. Reading that in here, I thought, because that was going to be my question sort of just ahead of time, knowing that that's our largest fleet, and typically that's the one that, you might have gotten the most pushback, right? Because you have somebody that wants the most powerful vehicles out there. Although I have sat in a Tesla, and those are very fast. So I imagine it's very capable of, creating a hybrid or even an all-electric vehicle where we could be, feel it's adequate for our police department. I wanted to see, we also denoted the largest number of crashes, which makes sense because it's the largest fleet is within the police department. But I think it was to the tune of over $500,000, so $600,000. What does that actually look like? The outsourcing of charges is what it says. What is that? What is the outsourcing of charges, if you can describe that? It's on page 15. Yeah, sorry.
The outsourcing of charges would be our contractual budget, which is our non-personal budget, and that would go because we do not do body work in-house, so we have to send that body work out, or if, whether it's an apparatus, a police car, if we're going to fix the vehicle, then that comes out of our budget, and then it gets charged to the department.
Okay. And would it make sense? Has anybody kind of analyzed that? Or maybe it's for the auditor's office to kind of determine, would it make sense to have some in-house, auto body specialist? It looks like in here 234 vehicle crashes. I don't know how many of those actually were fixed and brought back out, but $600,000 worth tells me a lot.
So of the 234, most of those were fixed.
Oh, wow.
There was several vehicles that were deemed unrepairable due to the nature of the damage. We have not looked at sourcing it. We don't have the infrastructure or the facilities to do that type of work.
More than just the personnel. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Yeah, it just, certainly a lot. And I can guarantee you it's going to continue to happen, right? So I think that that's just something that we saw in the police department year after year, especially as we hire new officers. It's the trend, right, for newer officers. Not shying away. I wrecked 2 within my first year. One was no longer in service. The other was fixed. So it happens it happens a lot actually. And so I imagine this number staying high. And so, but I do recognize there could be some other costs in regards to the facilities themselves. It may be something that I ponder with our auditor or talk to our director and kind of see, in a different conversation. Matt, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add, I think as you're aware, this is on the auditor's work plan, and we have been talked to the auditor about, what scope are they going to be able to look at. There's a lot of process improvements we want them to look at as well, hopefully. And this is one thing we can bring up in our next conversation with them leading up to the audit.
Okay, great. And then lastly, it looks like 40% of our fleet we've now sort of moving in the right direction with alternative fuel vehicles. Do we have a actual goal in place with the timeline and sort of what we're striving for? I didn't see that in there, or maybe I missed it.
So there is the 2030 timeline that has been published. Fleet itself, we are currently giving the message that if your vehicle is retired, you will be getting an electric vehicle unless there is justification that you can't have one if it doesn't fit your platform for whatever your job duties are.
And so the goal, just remind you, 2030 is that 100% then of our fleet, or no? Is there something?
No, there's still going to be portions of the fleet where there's not a viable option. So we're trying to do the light duty fleet by 2030, which
Okay,
is
so
a
specifically
smaller
it's for the
portion.
light duty fleet
Correct.
by 2030.
Let me add to that, Councilor Perales. Next month, as part of the Climate Smart report, DOT is going to be talking about the electric vehicle kind of roadmap strategy as well, and our city fleet is kind of part of that strategy. So you'll probably get more information on that next month as well. And they're collaborating with Public Works Fleet on that as well.
And I just want to add, and Councilman Perales, I know you were looking at it, the chart on page 22 at the top, the pie chart, the 1,261 vehicles that are still on unleaded. As you pointed out, the vast majority of those are police cars. So as soon as that technology for police catches up, which it looks like it's getting there, I think Dave was saying each police car has about 6 years of life. And so once that technology catches up, we're about 6 years away from really dramatically reducing the unleaded part of this pie with the police vehicles.
Okay, great. Yeah, I appreciate seeing the progress here and seeing how what it feels like we're moving in the right direction. I absolutely, without a doubt, agree that the police vehicles is kind of the biggest chunk of where we can actually see a difference. And so I look forward to seeing how these vehicles perform, and considering a couple other big departments have adopted them, I'm hopeful that we will too. Thanks.
Other questions from my colleagues?
I'll move approval of the report.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I have a couple of questions about the mobile fueling. How many new vehicles do we need, and what's the cost estimate on those new vehicles? So you said we have 4 currently, only 2 are high capacity. I think you left unsaid that we need more high capacity vehicles. How many more are we thinking about getting?
Yes, a good question, Chair Davis. So during the council study session that we had on emergency management about a week and a half ago, we had shared that within our current fleet, we do have the 4 vehicles, 2 high capacity, which can hold about 1,800 gallons of fuel. The 2 smaller ones can hold about 100 gallons. Within our evaluation and looking at the number of sites and the geographic coverage within the city, we feel that 2 additional high capacity fueling trucks of 1,800 gallons each would be adequate. Those 2, from a cost estimate standpoint, would be about $350,000, $175,000 each.
Thanks.
And we've identified a driver class in terms of licensing and hazardous materials endorsement that'd be qualified to drive those vehicles as well.
So we wouldn't need to hire any new staff for that?
We are looking at a pool of internal staffing that has those qualifications and endorsements to drive those vehicles. So it's all in-house.
And would those 2 vehicles be used only in the case of emergency, or are they able to be utilized at other times as well? So what do we do with the high capacity ones now, I guess is what I'm asking.
So currently we use them for remote fueling as well as mobile servicing throughout the city, different pieces of equipment or generators. So we do all the preventive maintenance on the generators and at the pump station generators throughout the city currently. So we use those for fueling and for maintenance.
And what's the, how long do we have each of these vehicles?
Traditionally, they're in the fleet for roughly 15 to 20 years.
Okay. I'm not sure why you were shifty-eyed on that one.
Well, because it's the retirement criteria says 10 years, but they don't really meet the criteria until they get to about somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
Sure, they're used on a less frequent basis.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. That's helpful. And then the other question I had was about the remote monitoring of generators. I can't remember if we talked about this at the emergency preparedness meeting. What is required to do remote monitoring, and how much is that going to cost, and how long do we think it's going to take to be able to have that in place at least at the 99 critical buildings that we have that already have generators?
So the cost is roughly $400 per generator for the initial hardware for the telematics to be installed, and there's an ongoing monthly charge of roughly $30 a month for the network to be able to monitor them. And timeline to install them would probably be, I'd have to double back with our team, but I would say within the next 6 months to a year to install them all.
And is that underway right now? Are they on order?
We're currently piloting one, validating it, making sure the system's gonna work properly for our needs, and then once that happens, then we're gonna have to go through the procurement process.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Those are all my questions. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion carries. Oops, thank you. And we can move on to item number 2, regulations related to discontinuation of water service.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Provenzano, Deputy Director for ESD, Municipal Water System. This item before you today is our new state requirements on water service disconnection. This past January 2019, the state passed Senate Bill 998. This is a statewide requirement directing all water utilities to modify their existing requirements related to water disconnection. There are 4 main categories included in these modifications. The first one is to develop a written and posted disconnection policy, to translate that policy into multiple languages, to establish, this bill sets an exemption process for low-income households and requires that the water utilities report annually the number of disconnections made. These modifications are slightly different than the way we're doing things now. Right now, our disconnection process is generally in 4 separate areas, different pieces. One part is in the municipal code. Another part is in Muni Water's rules and regulations resolution. A third part is based upon the programming parameters of our billing system. And the fourth part is in the procedures that we use for customer support, such as with the call center. So right now, we don't have a unified, cohesive document. It's pretty much spread around in multiple locations. In addition, because of that, it's usually in English, what is written. So this would be an improvement in going forward with this. And then the annual reporting requirements. Right now, the water utility annually submits this already to the State Water Resource Control Board. So this number is tracked and has been for several years and reported. The difference here is we would then publish this number on our website along with the policy. Overall, this objective of SB 998 is to increase transparency, help foster awareness and understanding of our disconnection process, and improve customer support. The next steps to comply with SB 998, as I mentioned, is to take out documents, take out language from the municipal code, and place it in an administrative policy on water disconnection, to amend the Muni Water Rules and Regs resolution and put that language also in the admin policy. And then the final piece would be to update our customer billing system. These are some minor upgrades that would be needed to the system in order to comply with this. Staff are available for questions.
Thank you. I have no cards on this issue. Do my colleagues have any questions? Councilmember Esparza. Oh, I might be getting a card. Is that okay? All right, Tessa?
Tessa Woodman C., Stockton Avenue. I was looking at your overall objective, which I haven't seen before, but I like it, which was SB 998. Increase transparency, foster awareness, and improve customer support services. I really do like that, and I think we are totally failing on that, so I don't have much hope that the city, even to deal with water disconnecting, because as a customer of the city, I'm a resident, I am a customer, okay? We have been so mistreated as customers that I'm bringing that to your attention of the way the system works in San Jose, is that I call my city council member, Deb Davis, no calls back. No calls back, okay? That's what happens. okay? And then many items, this has happened about, that, you know, the issue of her selling our building in our neighborhood that was horrific visual pollution, and she sells it to the corporations. That was without increased transparency. Me as a neighbor brought to attention that there was visual pollution by a 7-story wide and high building, all white. And she ignored it. Increased transparency. This is important. And then went ahead and sold it to the corporations to promote sports, faster awareness, and improve customer service. We need a system like San Francisco and New York, that we have a 311. You call a number, you get a code case, and then they respond. Everybody must respond to the code case. And that's what we need in the city of San Jose. So I can't have my particular city council member doesn't like me not respond back. We need a open transparency in our customer service like New York and San Francisco has adopted. So that we call 311, we get a code case, and we can follow through. That you can't be ignored because they don't like you. That's what they do in third worlds. They kill environment.
Thank you. Your time is up. Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. I wanted to just verify, reading in the memo about the disconnection exemption process and the process for low-income households. Can you talk about how the new rules and regulations will be revised to remove the miscellaneous billing and disconnected related text? I just want to make sure that you're adding clarity to the populations that need clarity on the disconnection policy.
Absolutely. So what is being removed from the municipal code and the resolutions will be added into the admin policy. So nothing will be deleted per se, but there is a part of SB 998 is a new statewide process that every water retailer has to follow on exemptions for a low-income process. So that's something new that we don't have in there yet.
And what is the outreach plan regarding this information, the updated process?
There isn't, we haven't really developed yet an outreach process yet. When we post it on our website, it has to be available on our website. And it has to be developed in, or done in 5 different languages. But then actually outreach to our customers, we haven't yet gotten to that part. We're still in the development phase of that policy.
And I'd add, we'll coordinate with housing and community energy to ensure that we're hitting all the low-income households that we know of in our municipal water service area. So we'll look to existing lists to blend those in terms of outreach, and then do additional public outreach, whether those are newspaper ads in libraries, et cetera.
Okay, great. And then my office is willing to help any way that we can as well. Thank you. Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. That motion carries, and we will move on to the building reach code.
Good afternoon, Carrie Romanow, Director, Environmental Services. Before we dive into the details of our proposed building reach code, I want to talk a little bit about, a little reminder about why we're here, but also just remind everyone that this is one of many actions that we'll take in regards to Climate Smart San Jose and our commitment to meeting the Paris Accords. We have, as you know, on our work plan, several more efforts underway. And, you know, we're particularly appreciative to Bloomberg Philanthropy for providing us with the American Cities Climate Challenge support. So we started this Reach Code effort in May, and in about 3.5 months, we're here with a proposed code for adoption. And so as we met with developers, affordable housing, stakeholders, environmental and climate groups, there was a lot of different conversations. We really feel like we've hit a nice place that meets what everyone needs in order to hit that January 1 deadline. So in addition to our appreciation to Bloomberg, also want to say thank you to the New Buildings Institute for their expertise, again, provided and funded by Bloomberg, and without their support, I don't think we could have gotten this done in such short order with as much community engagement. So a reminder that we're doing this as we continue to move forward in our climate reduction, in our greenhouse gas emission reduction efforts. As you see, almost every day, things are getting worse. And as this chart displays, global temperatures are warming at an increased, unprecedented rate. This chart displays our local temperatures. The climate challenges we're facing directly affect the quality of life for all residents in San Jose. June of this year was the hottest recorded June on record, and July of this year was the hottest month ever recorded. So this proposed REACH code is again about our commitments to Climate Smart and to the American Cities Climate Challenge, both of those which are focused on greenhouse gas emission reductions. The proposed REACH code attempts to do that by strongly encouraging the removal of natural gas from the built environment, and again, that is a key part of Climate Smart San Jose, which we can do now that we have San Jose Clean Energy and the opportunity to provide 100% renewable energy to our community. Before I turn it over to Ken and James, just want to remind everyone that cities play a crucial role in our nation's economic development and associated climate impacts. 90% of GDP and 86% of U.S. jobs are generated in 3% of the continental United States, mostly in our cities. 2/3 of the world's energy is consumed by cities, and 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions are produced in these cities. So as the 10th largest city in the United States, San Jose has a very important role to play in the fight against climate change. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ken to share our proposal with you.
Thank you, Carrie. Looking at our most recent GHG emissions profile from 2017, the built environment accounts for about 1/3 of our city's GHG emissions, second only behind transportation. Natural gas, in particular, represented nearly 60% of San Jose's total energy GHG emissions at the time the inventory was completed. In order to meet our climate smart emission reduction goals, the city must reduce natural gas usage by 83% by 2050. With this REACH code, an estimated 15 million metric tons of CO2 could be reduced through 2050 by electrifying residential buildings alone. The proposed code goes beyond that, just residential buildings, however, so we'll do more than that. We just want to emphasize again that what's proposed is designed to reduce GHG emissions through either of the two compliance paths we'll be discussing. For a variety of reasons, the city anticipates and wants to encourage significant growth in our building stock. We can see our projected build out per year over the next 5 years looks like what you see on the slide there, and that could represent 300,000 metric tons of CO2 over the building lifetime if we do not electrify. And now I'll pass it to James, who will discuss the difference between base code and REACH code.
Thanks, Ken. Building Energy Efficiency Standard, or Energy Base Code, is updated by the California Energy Commission every 3 years and get more stringent in each code cycle since the state has set goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and for buildings to generate renewable clean energy. We'll talk about the cost later, but it's important to remember that many of the cost impacts are embedded in the base code, especially for single-family homes. For this particular recommendation, we are amending 2 California codes, Energy Efficiency and Green Building. The overall 2019 California Code, also known as Title 24, will go to Council for approval separately in October. A REACH code is a local amendment that goes farther than what the state requires. Our proposed REACH code incentivizes building electrification, requires solar photovoltaic PV readiness where not already covered by the state, and requires EV infrastructure. A local amendment to state code in energy efficiency must be deemed cost-effective by the California Energy Commission and go through a 60-day comment period. Ken?
Thanks, James. On this slide, we're providing an illustration of the GHG reducing effect of the proposed code circa 2021. 2021 because that's when San Jose Clean Energy's electricity blend is scheduled to be carbon-free. If you focus on the total columns on the far right, we anticipate the proposed REACH code could get emissions down to at least the 1,500 metric ton CO2e level, depending on uptake. But we think it could go even lower than that because we're already seeing a bias towards all-electric construction as a cost-effective solution, even without the REACH code as a driver. Cost savings can be had when no natural gas service is being installed at the time of construction. And on the screen, you see a few examples of all-electric buildings going up locally and regionally. Continuing with the financial benefits, in addition to the lower construction cost, let me just go over a few terms real quick. EV ready or electric vehicle ready means a powered circuit from the panel to the parking stall up to and including the socket. EV capable means space in the breaker panel to accommodate future EV ready spots, plus an empty conduit between the panel and the parking space. That would just need the wiring, plug, and a breaker to be installed later. So that's the lower of the two options shown there. Not only does it make more sense to install at the time of construction, since retrofitting can involve retrenching parking lots or going back into walls, but having EV charging available or shortly available means we're helping our low-income disadvantaged residents towards the transition to electric vehicles, which have lower operational costs. So there is an equity element to that as well. Put simply, electrification, or more accurately, the removal of natural gas, makes us safer and improves indoor and outdoor air quality. Underground gas infrastructure continues to age and has a growing liability that is reflected in rising gas rates. No gas in the home means no harmful emissions coming off of gas ranges, which have been shown to episodically exceed outdoor air quality standards inside the home. The CEC is anticipating at least 40 to 50 jurisdictions will be coming forward in this code cycle with electrification REACH codes, and there is a real regional effort and collaboration that we've been a part of around electrification REACH codes at this time. In terms of our stakeholder engagement, we've published a city REACH code webpage to keep our stakeholders updated. Have emails go out to that group regularly. Over 65 stakeholders and 200 neighborhood associations were included in our outreach efforts. We had 4 stakeholder engagement workshops from May through July, 4 additional public presentations, and it says several, but actually very many individual meetings up into including last week as requested. What we heard from those groups were requests to do more in terms of electrification readiness, battery storage, requiring all electric and no gas at all, more EV-ready spaces, incentives for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And we also heard concerns about the ability of the grid infrastructure to handle electrification, and that using the highest energy design rating or compliance margins would make some mixed fuel settings cost prohibitive. Also, just concerns about the cost of all electric building and EV charging infrastructure. James is going to walk you through the draft versus proposed codes.
Thanks, Ken. The chart shows the 2 code compliant path that builders can take with our proposed REACH code. Please note that they are designed to get greenhouse gas reduction either way. Just to clarify on the chart, the draft and proposed requirement for all electric is same. However, responding to stakeholders' input, the proposed mixed fuel for energy efficiency is slightly less than the draft numbers. The code definition for high-rise residential is defined as 4 stories or more, low-rise as 3 stories or less. The incentive for all electric is that there are no added requirements beyond 2019 energy efficiency standard. Solar readiness required for all buildings were not fully covered by the state, which are high-rise multifamily, hotel, motel, and non-residential occupancy types. The same EV infrastructure is required for both pathways. That is, for single family requires 1 EV ready, multifamily requires 10% EV with supply equipment, and 50% EV capable. All non-residential requires 10% EV with supply equipment and 40% EV capable. All calculations must be based on the total number of parking spaces. We'll talk more about EV definition later in the presentation. For mixed fuel setting, where the builder has elected to keep natural gas in the building, the builder must include added energy efficiency to achieve emissions reductions that would have come through the removal of natural gas. Basically, for office and retail buildings require 10% higher than base code. High-rise residential, hotel, motel, and other non-residential require 5% higher than base code. For low-rise and single-family require their energy design rating to be less than or equal to 10. Also, the mixed fuel building must make everything in the unit fueled by gas electric ready, meaning they must have electric infrastructure in place for a future retrofit from gas to electric to occur. Ken?
Thanks, James. So from a cost perspective, we have a couple of different looks for you here. If we consider that all the buildings must meet the state's new 2019 base code, then at that point, the all-electric building under our proposal is done. They would not have to invest in any above-code improvements or efficiencies. In meeting the added efficiency requirements, again, to achieve GHG reductions through this pathway, the mixed fuel building will need to be even more efficient, as James mentioned. In other words, above code, and will therefore have a higher first cost of construction. So all electric provides a zero cost path incentive that way. The life cycle calculation is not quite simple arithmetic if you're trying to go across those rows there. It does include first cost of construction, including financing costs, annual costs, and maintenance costs, all with a net present value calculation applied to those components. This one is a little tricky, so bear with me. It provides a contrast between an all-electric building versus a mixed fuel building, both built to base code and based on building prototypes in the state's cost effectiveness study. In the first column, you'll see a lower first cost of construction for electric versus mixed fuel. Intuitively, that makes sense because we're not running gas service to the house. So no gas main, no gas meter, no piping after the meter. In the second column, annual utility cost estimates, and in the third, life cycle costs. Super important to note that those are electric versus mixed fuel costs today, and we anticipate gas rates rising much more significantly than electric rates in the years ahead. Here's a little more information about that. Everything we're reading is showing a much larger gas price escalations coming compared to electric, so that over time, the relatively higher annual utility cost and the life cycle cost compared to mixed fuel is going to trend downward. PG&E cost increase estimates went from 1% in 2017 to 6% in 2018, and that is just to support retrofitting underground pipes to current regulations. There will be additional future costs as gas infrastructure reaches its end of service life and must be replaced. Southern California Gas is actually proposing a 42% rate increase over the next 4 years, for example. And then that gas pricing, that trending is going to be exacerbated as we see regional and statewide pushes towards electrification by fixed costs for gas utility customers getting spread over a smaller and smaller customer base. Finally, while it is important to be mindful of costs, we need to remember that what gets built under this REACH code will be multi-generational in life expectancy. So we really need to ask ourselves the questions: how long we want natural gas, if fossil fuel, to potentially be around. This chart shows where San Jose lands relative to other cities in the region when taking into account the stringency of the proposed code. Keep in mind that much of what you see here is proposed and not yet adopted. We've moved very quickly through this effort and are actually one of the first cities coming forward to our council. And keep in mind, this is the proposal is in response to the cost of development concerns that have been brought to the team. Also keep in mind, this is where we land in this code cycle, and that while the base code is updated every 3 years, REACH codes can be brought even more frequently. So now we'll take a look at the proposed EV requirements. We talked about this a little bit, but just to go over the terminology again, EV capable has the empty raceway or conduit, some electrical capacity space in the panel. EV ready is the raceway with electric service capacity, overcurrent protection, wire, and outlet. And then EV supply equipment has everything you need to charge the vehicle immediately. In terms of cost to the overall project, what you see here is a multifamily and a non-residential development with 100 total parking spaces each. And you can see that our proposal comes in pretty low in terms of adding that infrastructure, less than 1% of project cost. Here is a comparison of San Jose's EV requirements against some other cities. You'll see an added definition here of conduit only that is actually less onerous than EV capable. It literally requires conduit only and no panel capacity, which we think is going to add costs later, which is why we went with capable. How do we get to these numbers? We started off with trying to mitigate costs and balance between the first cost of construction versus coming back and retrofitting later. While the EV charging infrastructure does not facilitate, while it does facilitate our policy goals, it is not part of the state's cost effectiveness guidelines. In other words, it adds costs without presenting a direct return in energy efficiency per their model. Secondly, we get at minimum another pass at this every 3 years through the building code cycle, and reach codes again can be brought even more often. So we should be able to course correct on this fairly frequently if we find ourselves too conservative or too aggressive. There have been comments to the 8 amps per space provided that we have in the proposed code. It provides some minimal additional electric service to be in place so that an upgrade later would be less significant. And or charging in those now upgraded capable spaces could also be handled through load management software, so it basically detects which car needs the charging the most and goes to that car first. So the lower amperage in that case wouldn't be as restrictive, at least initially. Our proposal also includes solar readiness. That includes identification of a solar ready zone on the roof, documentation of the structural load, including the solar panels, an interconnection pathway. The 2019 code includes solar readiness for most building types. Ours extends that to excluded non-residential buildings under the 2019 code. The solar ready saves about 10% of the installed cost of a system if they were to put that in later, so it gives them a little head start there. And there are nominal associated design and construction costs for solar readiness. So why this reach code and why now? It responds to stakeholder support and concerns. It seizes the opportunity to electrify buildings and transportation at a lower cost than at retrofit. It maintains a significant reduction in GHG emissions. It also ensures alignment with the 2019 effective date of January 1st for that new building code. And it gives us more impact because the sooner we do this, the better. And also supports our climate smart and American cities challenge goals. Up next, after council adoption, we would submit the code to the CEC for approval and public comment, provide trainings and resources for city staff and the public, including builders. And then the effective date for the REACH code would be seamless with the rest of building code on January 1st next year. And then we'd continue to look for funding opportunities to incentivize all electric buildings further, EVs and charging infrastructure in San Jose, and collect and report data on the REACH code impact as part of our regular climate smart updates. That concludes the presentation, but I know Chair Davis, you had asked for a summary of the comments received this morning. Not to overgeneralize, but they basically fell into 2 main categories. One was sort of the strength of the electrification signal that the proposed code provides, and if that would be strengthened by increasing compliance margins back up to where they were in the first iteration. We think that adding the electrification readiness back into the code has maintained that strength, but that's kind of where those comments were focused. And then more EV spaces and more electric service capacity for those spaces now is the other main bucket.
Thank you. We have many members of the public who would like to speak. If I call your name, please come and line up. And you don't have to come in this order, so the first one who gets to the mic can start speaking. David Peschel, Dashiell Leeds, Bruce Carney, Adam Singer, Panama Bartholomew.
Hi, good afternoon. Dave Poschel is the way I pronounce it, but you pronounced it more accurately than I do myself. I'm here today to represent the Santa Clara County Democratic Party and bring to your attention the fact that we've passed a resolution encouraging you to adopt strong reach codes. Okay, go strong. Because we are in a climate emergency. We don't have a lot of time. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, our scientists have said that to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is something we really need to do because as temperatures go up, the damage that is inflicted isn't linear. It'll get dramatically worse if we go above that. And so we have to act in a hurry. In their words, rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. And so we can't mess around here. And I thought staff did a wonderful job, thank you, in showing how much of our greenhouse gases are produced through transportation and in buildings. And so, while these reach codes seem a little mundane, they're really the way we're acting on climate change. And we could probably save a megaton or at least a ton of a GHG turning up the thermostat in here. I'm freezing. At any rate, it's really important, and this is our opportunity to lead. It seems like we're kind of following San Francisco and following Mountain View and Oakland, but let's at least start here. If you can't do better than this, we'll see you next year. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I hope this moves forward.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can I just say one thing real quick? Could I have 20 seconds?
I think
Kids
you're
are
out of time.
No. Let me hand these things off to you. The youth are coming out.
Just hand them to the city clerk. I'll make sure we get them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm a conservation assistant for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. Thank you so much to staff for your presentation. You covered a lot of what I want to talk about. I want to touch a little bit on natural gas, which is, we've sort of deluded ourselves over the years thinking that it's this clean bridge fuel, but it's really not. It's really, really bad. Just in terms of the local health impacts, it's leaking formaldehyde, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide into our homes. The formaldehyde sinks to the floor onto the ground level where our kids and pets are and poisons them. These levels of indoor air quality would be illegal if recorded outside, according to the EPA. And this isn't even to touch on the gas pipes underground, which are constantly leaking methane into our atmosphere and contributing to climate change. This is a really huge issue. And I think that when we look at natural gas, I see it really as what it is, which is it's a poison. And in terms of both the cost to our citizens, in terms of health and safety, and the cost to our city in terms of these retrofits that we are going to have to do to solve the crisis of climate change, every piece of natural gas infrastructure that we built or that we build, it's going to be a liability, and quite frankly, it's going to be a tragedy that we're going to pay for down the road. These natural gas pieces of infrastructure, it's really going to be a stranded asset going forward, and that increasing cost of gas, as was discussed, I think these predictions, even though they seem like they're going to be going up and up, I think they're even more conservative than what we're going to see. On September 20th, youth all around the world are going to strike to demand immediate action on climate change. We're seeing cities take action, and I think this is going to generate real momentum that's going to change the way we do things. We are in a defining moment right now, and the market is ready, the people are ready, the community is ready. We can do this. Let's adopt alternative 1 as written in the staff memo and have a clean, simple, all-electric reach code.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bruce Carney. I live in Mountain View. I am the chair of Carbon Free Mountain View and one of the board members of Carbon Free Silicon Valley. When I was 25 years old, I was taking a public policy class in Berkeley, and our instructor gave a quote that was attributed to then young Governor Jerry Brown. And Jerry Brown in '78 said, "Political leadership consists of finding out where the parade is going and getting in front of it." And when I was 25, I thought that was a very cynical thing to say. But now that I'm 66, I think it's a pretty accurate description of what political leadership really consists of: finding out where the parade is going and getting in front of it. And clearly, the parade on reach codes is going for strong reach codes. I love the slide that showed the cities strung out from left to right, with Berkeley off on the far right, which is an unusual place for Berkeley to ever be. Mountain View closer to Berkeley than San Jose. So I would love to see you demonstrate your leadership by persuading your colleagues on the council to adopt a very strong reach code, one that sends the message that the Bloomberg Climate Challenge grant has made a difference and that San Jose understands what a difficult road it will be to achieve the kind of deep greenhouse gas reductions that all cities, all counties, and all states must achieve for the nation and the world to meet those goals that are set out before us. So I have confidence, based on your past support of strong climate action, that you will continue along that path and will lead that parade. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm with the Sunrise Movement, and yesterday was at a meeting regarding the upcoming strike Dash mentioned, 20th of September. We'll be right outside City Hall, right here. And we were planning this. I met Dashel, who told me about this issue, and a number of other people who were interested but could not be here because 1:30 p.m. they are, many of them, back at school. So right here, I'm speaking on behalf of 48 people who have not been able to come today, but very much care about this issue for a lot of the reasons that other people have been talking about and other people will talk about. I hear that Berkeley is the only other city to have done what is being proposed today, and we are going to be, Sunrise is going to be talking about wherever is ahead of the curve, leading the parade, someone said. If we can be part of it, then we're going to be promoting all the awesome work. I think everybody's on board for it. Cool. Well, take care, everybody.
Thank you. And before the next speaker, just a second. Diane Bailey, Per Della Forge, Maria Stamus, Axum Tafara, and Matthew Gao. Please line up. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, my name is Panama Bartholomew. I'm the director for the Building Decarbonization Coalition. We're a coalition of utilities, manufacturers, builders, local governments, and NGOs that work on building decarbonization here in the state of California. My members include manufacturers of the types of equipment that would be discouraged or no longer allowed to be sold in San Jose if your policy is adopted today. We represent 96% of North America's hot water heater manufacturers and about 40% of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning manufacturers in North America. And I'm here to say that they are supportive of San Jose and other cities in California adopting these REACH codes, because these manufacturers are clearly seeing the direction that the state and the country is going, which is one towards electrification of heating sources. I just wanted to come and give a brief update about some of the things that are going on around California that we're seeing. Didn't start the time, huh? Yep. I'll keep it to only a minute left. The great thing is that your staff presentation, your staff killed it. They gave a great presentation. We're seeing presentations all over the state, and that was the best presentation I've seen so far. So well done on hiring great staff on this. On the issues of cost, which come up quite a bit, I just want to direct your attention to the California Building Industry Association's report they put out last year. So this is the trade association of home builders in California. They put out a report called Electrifying Residential Appliances. And they looked at the additional cost of an all-electric home built in California compared to one with mixed gas. And the home builders of California found that building all-electric, not including the infrastructure of the gas lines to the home, you'd have about an additional $180 to $400 of costs to build an all-electric home compared to a gas home. Next to nothing when you look at the costs of building homes in California. And then if you look at the about $4,000 to $6,000 to $7,000 per home of putting in gas lines, it's very much clear. If we want to actually make an impact on reducing upfront costs for building homes in California, we should not be including unnecessary infrastructure that's is out of alignment with our climate goals and our energy goals here in the state and here in the city. So I just want to finish by saying electric buildings, they're cheaper to build, they're cheaper to operate, they're healthier for occupants, they're healthier for communities, and they're better for climate change. There's no reason to be building natural gas fueled buildings anymore into the future, and I look forward to seeing your deliberations moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Axum Tefera, representing the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. The Air District is here to express strong support. Can you hear me? This is tough. Strong support for the City of San Jose's adoption of an aggressive REACH code. The Air District is committed to working with Bay Area municipalities to advance greenhouse gas emissions reductions. In 2017, we published Spare the Air, Cool the Climate, a regional clean air plan that serves as a blueprint for a Bay Area with a post-carbon economy and clean air for all. In an effort to implement innovative strategies towards its future, the Air District awarded the City of San Jose a 2018 Climate Protection Grant to launch a pilot electric heat pump water heater education and incentive program focused on retrofits in residential buildings. Our objective is to learn from this and our other pilots to then hopefully develop sustained regional programs around building electrification. The Air District fully supports electrification across our region because the removal of natural gas combustion from our buildings makes them safer and healthier for people and better for the climate. We see electrification as an important step on our path to a carbon-free region. The district encourages REACH codes with measures that strengthen efficiency standards and require the inclusion of, or at least the readiness for, solar PV and EV charging infrastructure across building types. We applaud the city's participation in the American Cities Climate Challenge, its adoption of a climate action plan aligned with the Paris Agreement, and launch of a CCA that aims to offer 100% carbon-free electricity by 2021. There is an urgency to this climate crisis, and the adoption of a strong REACH code is a necessity for it to meet our global climate goals. This adoption will position San Jose as a leader and serve as a model for other Bay Area municipalities, and the Air District's very eager to work with you all collaboratively to take steps to implement Climate Smart San Jose and a REACH code. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
All All right, hello everyone. My name is Matt Goff, and I'm here today on behalf of the Sierra Club and our 16,000 members here in San Jose. I want to thank staff, first of all, for that fantastic presentation. The Sierra Club supports building electrification for its impacts on climate change mitigation, on affordable and healthy homes, and on climate resiliency. Clearly, San Jose shares these same values, and y'all can play an incredibly important role for statewide leadership. So by adopting this ordinance, the city of San Jose can lead a wave of cities and counties across California in declaring that fossil fuels have no place in our homes, commercial buildings, or communities, and that we have a right to clean, safe, and affordable energy. San Jose will not be alone in deciding to move towards electrification. The city of Carlsbad has already opted to remove gas furnaces out of their appliances. The city of Berkeley has moved to ban gas in new construction. San Luis Obispo recently passed an aggressive REACH code. Santa Monica is voting tomorrow on a REACH code. Menlo Park is voting to move gas out of their new construction. Let's see. As we've witnessed with rooftop solar and zero net energy policies, cities and county leadership is key to raising the ambition of state policymakers. Change starts at the local level, and climate leadership is desperately needed if we are to reduce emissions and comply with climate science. We need the all-electric REACH code, as staff have outlined. We encourage y'all to go with alternative 1 and move towards true building electrification so we can get gas out of our infrastructure and address the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Diane Bailey. I'm with Menlo Spark, a local community nonprofit fighting for a carbon-free future. And I'm also with the Fossil Free Buildings Campaign for Silicon Valley. It's a collection of 20 different groups who are all working to accelerate a transition from fossil fuels in our buildings. And I'm here to express strong support for Staff Alternative 1 for an all-electric REACH code. As many of my colleagues have voiced support, I'm extremely concerned that the current draft REACH code proposal has such small incentives to go electric with new construction that it's really little more than a speed bump to continuing the use of dirty, dangerous fossil fuels in new homes and buildings, the current status quo. And folks from Palo Alto can tell you that it will take a much stronger incentive for builders to change their standards and their habits. When Palo Alto passed a REACH code with similarly small incentives as the current or draft REACH code, most of the projects over the past few years, as it turns out, wound up using natural gas, and that was not the intent of the REACH code. Fortunately, now they have a chance to fix that, but I hope that you won't repeat that mistake. We're really at a moment in time where we need leadership. We need leadership from the largest city in this region and one that is internationally recognized as a climate leader. Now that San Jose is a Bloomberg American Climate Challenge city, I hope that you'll use this platform to show how smart policy to transition off of fossil fuels can look like. We all need an electric REACH code. Unfortunately, there are a lot of good models that have been discussed here tonight, and I won't review them, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use one of those all-electric models that some cities have already adopted, and we hope that you'll move forward with that for September 17th. We noticed the mayor's op-ed in the San Jose Mercury a few weeks ago. It was an excellent show of support for climate action and leadership. Mayor Liccardo noted that electrification, together with local energy and storage, can help us rapidly decarbonize our economy. We agree, and we know we need to do just that. I think we really need to ask the question, does anyone in San Jose want to continue using fossil fuels? I don't think so. And you're all in a leadership position to really change that. We need the rapid change. I see that I'm out of time, and I hope you will move forward swiftly with Alternative 1 for an all-electric REACH code. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And I want to note that we have some supporting materials that I'll email to you all that show a lot of local examples of all-electric affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Davis, committee members. My name is Pierre Delforge. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council, where I lead our policy work on building decarbonization in California and across the country. And I will focus my comments today on the building energy part of the REACH code, which is my area of expertise. The tragic wildfires of 2017 and 2018, the Coyote Creek flood here in San Jose, record heat waves, hurricanes, these are just a few of the increasingly pressing calls for ambitious and urgent climate action. San Jose has rightly recognized this need and is to be commended for committing to such action in its Climate Smart San Jose plan. And today's REACH code is an opportunity to put this plan into action and cut one of the largest sources of emissions, gas burned in buildings for heat and hot water. NRDC appreciates the opportunity to collaborate with staff to develop this proposal. We support the proposal, but we also urge adoption of one of the stronger alternatives in the staff report. We realize that some stakeholders are still concerned about potential cost impacts, and we respect these concerns, but the input from many building professionals who are already building all electric today is clear. With today's best practices, all electric buildings cost less to build and operate. Buildings of every type are already being built all electric today in the Bay Area at the same or lower cost, although still in limited numbers. And this is before the market has even learned how to do it efficiently. Once the REACH code provides policy certainty and scale to the market will adapt very quickly and shift its focus on how to comply most cost effectively with the new requirements, further reducing cost. And this will unleash an inherently more affordable way to build and operate a building, helping make housing more affordable in San Jose. But to achieve this market transformation and its benefits, the REACH code must provide a meaningful enough incentive and make electric construction the norm. Building design experts estimate that this requires raising the bar by at least 10 to 15% for buildings using gas, and using a consistent threshold so that we provide simplicity to the market, so that, depending on the buildings you build, it's not 5 or 7 or more percent. So Chair and committee members, California cities are currently making history by launching a zero emissions building movement. Maybe I should call it a parade. The choice in front of you today is whether Silicon Valley's capital is at the front of this parade or at the back of the parade.
Thank you.
Thank you for your choice and for the decision.
And will the following speakers line up? Dan Megan, Tessa Woodmansee, Scott Schell, Ida Rose Sylvester, Huáscar Castro.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Maria Stamis. I'm here on behalf of the Natural Resource Defense Council's more than 6,400 members and activists in San Jose, nearly 100 of whom have submitted support letters. I'm also an attorney and technical strategist, and I lead our buildings, energy efficiency, and decarbonization work for the American Cities Climate Challenge, of which you've heard mention of to date. The city of San Jose was chosen as a winner of the Climate Challenge due to its ambitious vision and commitment to execute upon the Paris-compliant, climate-smart San Jose strategies. And the REACH code is the first major initiative to receive Climate Challenge support. San Jose's Buildings REACH code is one of those win-squared policies, by which I mean it has multiple benefits. As staff's presentation showed, it's utterly reasonable, and it exemplifies the smart leadership that San Jose is well known for. You've already heard many of the benefits from others. It protects our climate, it promotes public health, it improves the safety of our homes and workplaces. However, as someone with several years' experience in the affordable housing sector specifically, I wanted to address those concerns and talk specifically about how the REACH code can benefit lower-income renters and affordable housing developers. So because of the REACH code's efficient technologies and retrofit-ready features, homeowners and renters will save money on their utility bills increasingly over time, as any new building connected to gas will either have to be retrofitted at much higher expense, and it will also lock occupants into gas bills that are projected to increase over time. The REACH code saves developers money as well, as you've already heard. When developers build all-electric buildings, they either don't incur any additional upfront costs, or those costs are very, very minimal. Now, what I did want to acknowledge and address is that San Jose's code does call for increased EV charging infrastructure. However, those costs are estimated at approximately 1/1,000th to 1,000th of the overall construction costs. So very minimal and very prudent. So San Jose is already a city with the greatest market share of EVs, and charging infrastructure is needed to help continue meeting that demand. I also wanted to mention briefly that for affordable housing developers, numerous incentive programs exist or will be available in the very near term. I realize I'm out of time, so I will follow up, but there are 4 specific programs that are out there.
Thank you.
And so we highly encourage you to adopt the REACH code.
So good afternoon. Thank you all for your work on this. I really appreciate it. I'm Scott Schell with EHDD Architects. We're a 65-person firm. We've designed a dozen all-electric buildings starting in 2001. When we started, it was novel, and it was a little hard, and it was a little bit more expensive. But that's changed, and it's become routine in the last 10 years, and the cost is now equivalent or less. We've been bidding out projects. In one case, we bid it out with both gas and electric, and it came back equivalent, but we were able to eliminate a $73,000 gas connection line, so it was that much cheaper. Our biggest client is University of California. They now require all buildings of all types on all 10 of their campuses all over the state to not use gas for heating and hot water. One of the reasons they're doing that is they don't want to put that infrastructure in their buildings and then have to take it out in the next 15 years with some retrofit mandate. So our clients that own their buildings are worried about installing equipment that they're then going to have to take out. When I started on this REACH code stuff, I interviewed 7 of the mechanical engineering firms that we work with and said, hey guys, we're responsible, we're signing our names to this, are we ready? They said, yes, we're ready. I would encourage you to strengthen it. We're routinely required by clients to design above Title 24. UC requires us to design 20% better than Title 24. CSU requires us to design 10% better. So a small compliant margin is not very much incentive. Menlo Park is, they're requiring all electric, but then giving exceptions for the things they just couldn't get over, like a fireplace or a gas stove. And they made one exception for research labs. So I would really encourage you to go all electric. Sonoma Clean Power offered very significant financial incentives to go all electric, and yet only 1/3 of the homeowners took it. So I'm concerned that a small compliance margin is not very effective. So with that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Migan with Tesla. Wanted to thank you all for taking this up today. Thank you, staff, for all your work on the report. We applaud these efforts greatly. We certainly are interested in seeing more electric vehicles into the world. It's our stated mission to further these efforts. We've submitted some written commentary around requirements for EV-capable spaces in particular. And I have a bunch of notes, but I think I just kind of wanted to go a little off the cuff here. I don't normally do this. I'm not our normal policy person for these sort of things. I'm responsible for level 2 infrastructure around the world that's AC charging. And I support teams globally that do this. And the thing that really prevents customers from moving forward with an electric vehicle purchase, more than anything I see, I'm admittedly on the charging side, is really access to power in the building. So everything you can do to support bringing conduit to a parking space, you can pull the wire later, but having the available power in the panel, so this comes back to the 8 amp issue that you've brought up, is really one of the best things you can do to ensure that when someone's at a critical point of deciding to move forward with an electric vehicle, that it's seen as something that's easily done with the infrastructure that's already in place. You mentioned these are multi-generational buildings. We want to ensure that when future generations come and think about moving towards an electric car, which we hope all residents of these buildings will eventually do, it's easy and relatively inexpensive for them to do. So thanks for your efforts. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ida Rose Sylvester, representing the Campaign for Fossil-Free Buildings in Silicon Valley. We ask you to revert to at least as strong compliance margins and EV charging requirements as found in version 1, or even better, simplify and strengthen your approach by adopting a version of Alternative 1 in the staff report, focusing on going all electric. We want San Jose to follow the great examples being set in other cities, such as Menlo Park, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Rosa, which are focusing on nearly all electric code. We ask San Jose to set examples for other large cities and continue your leadership in climate change management and prevention. San Jose can do this in one of 2 ways. Raise the compliance and margins and electric vehicle requirements to meet the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Code. These compliance margins were based on very careful cost modeling of the statewide studies sponsored by the CEC and represent the best and most realistic mitigations for the impact of mixed fuel buildings. They were set to encourage electrification. Dramatically dropping these margins to the current level in the draft will disincentivize electrification. Or better, choose a more elegant, more simple solution and choose alternative 1. We understand the concerns expressed by some stakeholders that higher compliance margins can be restrictive. To that end, we recommend considering the Menlo Park option for all electric space and water heating, reducing gas usage by 80%, and still allowing some uses such as gas cooktops or other necessary requirements in your city. You could design a set of exemptions that meet city stakeholder needs, for example, exempting the downtown area if electric was seen as a deterrent to high-rise development, or for affordable housing if it's considered too burdensome. I'd like to thank you very much for your leadership today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Oscar Castro, Policy Associate with Silicon Valley at Home. First off, we would like to thank city staff for all their hard work throughout this process, as well as being responsive to our organization and our affordable housing development partners. We are in strong support of the City of San Jose's Climate Smart Initiative and ongoing efforts to reduce our carbon footprint citywide. However, given San Jose's affordable housing shortage, we should be mindful of how any policy may create adverse effects on the financial feasibility of affordable housing development. In that spirit, we ask that the committee take into account specific proposed regulations that have created pause among our development partners, specifically EV requirements at certain income levels, such as permanent supportive housing, where many residents are more likely to utilize other forms of transit, such as mass transit. We recommend that the committee and the entire council consider reducing parking requirements and EV parking requirements for affordable housing development at deeper levels of affordability, such as permanent supportive housing. State law recognizes senior special needs, permanent supportive housing require far fewer parking spaces, and we would do so as well as at the local level. As the city continues to review the cost of development to find out how we can make projects more feasible, adding additional construction costs will only deter housing production at a time when it is greatly needed. We look forward to continued coordination and communication on these issues and ask that these issues be addressed before final adoption. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, will the following people line up? Mary Buxton, Zoe Volpa, Marshall Woodmansee, Julie Allingham, Linda Hutchins Knowles, and Karen Nelson.
Thank you. Hold on, I was just gonna, okay, good. Thank you very much. Well, I hate to spoil the party again because it sounds so fun, all these electric cars and things like that, but we really, I do support the electrification of our buildings. I think that's a very good idea, and we should be doing that. And I'm very happy that you're considering that, as we have faced so many problems with natural gas, and there are so many problems with it, that we do not need it to come into our homes. And I definitely feel safer not having natural gas on our house. So we need to really work on helping everybody not have natural gas, so we don't have to experience the problems that we've experienced in San Bruno throughout our community. So that, but in addition, this issue of the electrification of our fleet of cars, that I always look at the 40,000 deaths from cars a year, 40,000 deaths from cars a year, and 2.5 million maimed and disabled human beings from cars every year. 2.5 million maimed and disabled every year from cars. And we don't solve that problem just by electrifying, because the car in and of itself is not human scale. It goes now at 100 miles an hour. It has the tinted windows. It has anonymity. You're not talking to your neighbor with the car. So to put in the infrastructure that makes it, car ready, is putting a seal of approval on our cars. And we need to really get away from the car. The car is a problem. So what, all I can say is that at least you can put in maybe the conduit and the little bit of, the lowest amount of infrastructure to support the EV car. Yes, it's an improvement of out of our internal combustion engine, yes, but it still has many of the problems of the car. And the last thing is that when we mined lithium, we are destroying the desert in Chilean desert. So, to say that it's going to expand all of our electricity to support cars, that is not the way it needs to go. So we need to reduce the car load.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mary Buxton, and I retired 2 years ago, and my retirement job is working on climate change with 350 Silicon Valley, and I also sit on the board of the executive committee of the Loma Prieta Sierra Club. So this is kind of what I'm doing with my time nowadays, is working on, well, actually getting civically involved, which is pretty exciting. So I just wanted to come out here as a citizen advocate and say that I support the all-electric REACH code for buildings and for automobile infrastructure, electrification. I drive an electric car. And I think all-electric buildings are healthier to live in. They are less expensive to build and are cheaper to operate, and will get cheaper to operate over time because the costs on all these things are coming down. And finally, I think this is really an essential and huge impact area to reduce greenhouse gases and greenhouse gas emissions and to fight climate change. And I thank you all for all that you do, sitting here every day through all these meetings, or when you have meetings. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, committee and staff. My name's Julie Allingham. I'm providing brief comments today on behalf of the members of San Jose Community Energy Advocates, who were key to the launch of SJCE and continue to advocate on related topics. We agree with all the other advocates that a strong REACH code is very important and will structurally set up San Jose to achieve its climate-smart commitments. We also know San Jose has other important goals to consider, and so we encourage creative ideas, including an exception process to address San Jose's local affordable housing and parking needs. We and our partners believe that the current proposal needs to be significantly strengthened in order to increase the chances it will actually drive the intended decisions and results, which are for high levels of building electrification and cost-effective preparation for the EV transition. Now, there might be multiple ways to achieve that. We currently think that the best approach for San Jose may be to align with at least Alternative 2 in the staff memo, which is setting bolder electric incentives, ensuring a stronger market signal to move away from gas for major appliances, and increasing the requirements for EV readiness, which is outlets in all building types instead of the weaker EV-capable standard. The small incremental cost of the outlet above just providing a conduit seems like the most cost-effective approach. We hope you'll support these changes as the REACH code moves to council next week, and really want to thank you all for continuing to show wise, forward-looking leadership along with our neighboring cities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get this down lower for me. Hi, I'm Karen Nelson, and I'm the chair of the Climate Reality Santa Clara County chapter, and I'm a San Jose resident. I want to join with the others that have spoken here today to share my deep concern for the very limited value that we see REACH Code Draft 2 that you're looking at right now provides. It doesn't protect health and safety from the risks associated with methane, natural gas, and it doesn't protect climate change, as we all know we need to do. Here's what we propose regarding the Draft 2 modification. We'd like you to revert, at a minimum, to the compliance margins found in Draft 1, and preferably to be in alignment with SVCE's model REACH code. That's so, reverting back to Draft 1. We'd like you to restore Draft 1's EV charging station readiness and restore the language for multifamily, but with special exemption provisions for affordable housing, because we know that that's also a crisis we face. And here's a couple of thoughts about how you could really move yourself to far more aggressive REACH codes. We'd like you to think about these two, far more aggressive REACH codes with these two tools in tandem. That you may want to allow natural gas use for single-family residential cooktops and fireplaces. And that to continue encouraging the growth that we know San Jose wants, you may want to include industry-specific exemptions and an appeal process. by applying Draft 2's limited standards for true hardship. So we know that by doing those two things, by using those tools, you can feel really pretty comfortable by moving forward to far more aggressive reach codes. Our future is in your hands. We really want you to think about developing a far more effective, rigorous reach code that makes a real difference for health and safety, for emission control, and which honors the intent of Climate Smart San Jose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Hutchins-Knowles with Mothers Out Front South Bay, a group of about 1,000 mothers and others in the city that are working for livable climate for all children. I want to start by thanking staff for all the thought that went into this REACH code, the excellent presentation, and for the community engagement that you invited and participated in. We know you're trying to balance a lot of needs. We appreciate you listening to all these presentations and comments and considering what best to do in this situation. We agree with the majority of the comments here that we need to have a strong REACH code, and the current draft is not going to cut it. It's just not going to get us to the goals of the American Cities Climate Challenge. We believe that we can strengthen it either through Alternative 1, the original, Draft 1 and higher compliance margins, or through an all-electric code. We actually think that all-electric is the way we're going. That's the wave of the future. It was kind of disappointing to see where San Jose would be positioned, kind of in the back of the pack. We are this capital of Silicon Valley. We can be the leaders here. Why let Berkeley and Menlo Park have that mantle? Why don't we claim that? Do the best for our children's health. My daughter has asthma. We were able to afford to put an induction stove. She no longer has to breathe those noxious fumes. Other families cannot afford to do that. If they live in an apartment with gas, they're stuck with that. So for equity, for health, and for climate, we think this needs to be much stronger. Don't be scared by outdated information. You all got a letter from Stet Sanborn of the Smith Group. He is a builder and has done many all-electric buildings for less cost than gas. So this is here. The technology is here today for this. Please don't delay. We don't have 3 more years to get this right. This is the time to get the strongest possible REACH code you can. The climate feedback loops are accelerating. And don't settle. We can make it much stronger. You have a great tool with the REACH code. It's the second most impactful thing after community choice energy, but only if you make it strong. So we ask you to direct staff to go back and come back with one of the stronger alternatives. We're counting on you. If you're all in on the Paris Climate Agreement, please be all in on the REACH code. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, council and staff. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Marshall Mancy, candidate for City Council District 6. It's difficult to see the charts where Berkeley is always so much farther ahead. There's a lot of them out there, in a lot of different sectors. And they're always, do I have to start this? No, I don't. Okay. It shows that Berkeley is doing the right things for climate action, and it's distressing that those charts seem to propose that San Jose is either not doing the right thing for climate action or they could be doing more. But I don't think that that's any reason for us to be disheartened. We have done some amazing things before, especially as the capital of Silicon Valley. People are recording this on phones when back in my day, phones were a lot bigger, right? We've done these incredible technological advancements. I don't think that a building code increase is going to be challenging at all. I do highly encourage you to adopt Alternative 1, all electric, and as well as going to residential, because it is going to take all of us. It's going to take every building, every person, every sector to make the changes necessary. I want to, when I speak on the climate strike this next on the 20th, I want to tell the kids that are there who have put aside their own schooling to be there, that people in city government are also putting aside time, energy, resources to fulfill the demands that these students are bringing. It would be unfortunate if I was to tell them, you know what, you're actually doing the most out of this city. That's not the conversation I want to have with them, and you shouldn't want to have that conversation with them either. So I greatly encourage you to do all that you can to adopt Alternative 1 and further codes and reaches for the greenification, the electrification of our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
is Zoe Volpe. I'm a student at DENSA. I don't think there's something that I can say that somebody else hasn't already said that, I don't agree with. So I guess I'm just here to say that a lot of people have talked about the climate strike on September 20th. And from what I've learned, there's only two ways that change has ever been made in history. And it's either through legislation or through people gathering in the streets. And you all have the biggest opportunity and privilege of being the ones to make those decisions for us. And I would really like you to support the aggressive reach code in alternative 1 because we can't wait. I think somebody said that, if this doesn't pass, they'll be back here next year for the vote. Well, I don't have that time. I'm in college. I won't be here next year. I'll be here the day after the vote if it doesn't pass, along with a lot of other young people who are really concerned about our futures. And every small step matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning it back to my colleagues who would like to start. Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some questions about some of the outreach that was outlined. It had 59 stakeholders and then I think 200 neighborhood associations. Were those completed with the 200 engaged, or were the 200 neighborhood associations invited?
They were invited.
And how many of those attended?
I'd say we had maybe half a dozen on the neighborhood associations. The main group we were going after was the same building stakeholder list that we had used for the building performance ordinance last year. So trying to get those folks in the room. For the neighborhoods is more for their information because they obviously already live in a constructed building, so didn't expect a lot of response there.
Sure. To me, it's always important to involve our community because they are also the ones who are either clogging up our freeways or using mass transit and freeing up our freeways, right? And so either way, I think most people have a really good, some really great feedback to provide us and some direction to provide us when we're making these kinds of decisions, because these are going to impact us for many, many years. Let me ask you about some folks I've heard were really happy about this version that you've brought forward, but there are some folks who talked about the draft one with the first, was their first choice. Can you share the reasons why this is the version that you brought forward? Was it because of the stakeholders that kind of helped shape this? Was it because of our state of affairs with development? What was it?
Thank you. Part of the way that we approach outreach is to be open-minded and to listen and respond to the community. So as we worked with predominantly the development community and also the affordable housing community, we heard concerns about cost. We heard a lot of ideas for exemption processes, and to be honest, those are very administratively burdensome, and they can create additional costs for the city, but it can also slow process. The developers very clearly communicated that they like certainty. They may not like the rule, but they like to know what to expect. We as staff feel very strongly that all of our community should participate and that we should not exempt affordable housing from something that we think is good for the environment, but also good for public health. And so we didn't feel like we should exclude them. So the compromise is what we're putting forward, because we think that is respective of what we heard from the community that participated. To your earlier question, there wasn't a lot of participation from the neighborhoods and the sort of typical resident. As Ken indicated, they're probably not in the process of building a new home today, so maybe not something that was top of mind. But certainly, as we see today, a lot of interest. I think we have more participants today than in our process, which kind of makes me really proud to be a San Jose resident, that people are interested, they're engaged, and they took time to come out. So, so we certainly learned a lot today as well.
Great. Actually, a lot of these folks here helped us with our Measure C, and I think I've seen folks from committee for Green Foothills, the Audubon Society, Sierra Club, Mothers Out Front. These are all folks who helped us with legislation last year when our industrial land was at risk. And they did a really wonderful job of involving the community. And so I would say let's extend that offer to these folks, because these are the community members that can bring others in. Even though it was not a presidential year, I think we had like about a 70% vote on Measure C, and then against Measure B, the same. And so we've seen the power of our community, and I would say that we still need to continue to engage them in this process. I feel like maybe this is not completely been heard with our community. I'm in conflict of this because I think about the EV capable, and that might be more something that developers can actually do, right? But I think, how useful is it if it's going to create some expense for residents or for those tenants? How plausible is it for them to actually finish that and make that EV ready? I don't know what those amounts are to take EV capable to EV ready for a resident. And I don't know who that person would be, who would be responsible for making that EV capable actually capable.
So I could use myself as an example. I had to install EV infrastructure at my house, and because none of that was there in advance, it involved a full panel replacement and upgrade, and then running all the conduit to where the charger unit is. So we know that if we have an EV capable spot put in at the time of construction, the upgrade to ready is really just a few $100s. It's not a big add.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's there. You just need to run the wire to that and install the plug.
I would also add, though, that having every resident in San Jose go home and charge their car at night is not something that Lori tells me is desirable. So we want to be mindful that home charging is not the only solution out there. And that today, the team tells me there are 13,000 EVs in San Jose. So as technology evolves, we don't necessarily want to have a lot of infrastructure in place that's not usable yet or ready to be used. And as Ken and the team have expressed today, technology is evolving. So load shifting software and other storage technologies are going to continue to evolve. And so we want to be ready for that too, which is where we like where we landed today as sort of a place in time. And Ken, what would you add to that?
Just that we tried to balance having the developments be ready for that EV market when it arrives in the future without adding all of that cost for a full EV readiness or EV service equipment situation land right now. So they're not prohibited from doing that. They're facilitated in doing that later if we take a kind of a smaller step right now and have those spots ready for them. If we have, I think, 3% of registered vehicles in San Jose, roughly, are electric vehicles, our proposed draft hits about a 50% of some level of EV readiness. So the question for me was, are we going to go from 3% to 50% in the next 3 years? And if we're going really fast towards that by then, let's beef up the requirement in the next code cycle.
And one of the comments that we received from construction community was that even with EV ready, it's not being utilized at this time. So providing additional EV ready would be space, kind of wasting a space and burden for a cost increase for providing this unnecessary item at this point. So 50% of parking space, if you look at it, let's assume, for example, we have 100 parking spaces. 50% is 50 parking spaces will have a conduits for future wiring, which is, Ken mentioned, is retrofit costs will be very trivial compared to overall construction costs at this point.
Right. I think with the development that we have in the pipeline now, we are creating future generations of folks who will be dependent on mass transportation. We expect that. We expect to see that. And my mind goes to some of the communities that are overcrowded, right? And currently don't have the benefit of enjoying some of these things. And I know that if a family decides to have an electric car, typically they'll come to work, charge it at work or at some public spot, right? So I get that you don't want to have some feature ready there without it having an actual use. So I understand that, and I like to, I think, hear a little bit more from our community to see exactly what would be a middle ground. It seems like it's either what you're offering now or the first draft, and I'm not sure. Maybe this is a discussion that we'll take to the greater council, and the greater all of the council can then decide. But I wonder between now and next Tuesday if there's anything that you can do with the folks who are in the room who might have not been in the room when you first were collecting the information.
Yes, there is. We'll figure that out.
Okay.
So to anybody who's still here, I'll figure that out tonight.
Tonight, okay.
So
no pressure.
Yeah. You know, we're also bringing forward an electric vehicle strategy as part of Climate Smart. And so we are moving that package as well. And then as some of the affordable housing folks have mentioned, you know, there is a need to look at how much parking should be required going forward. So lots of companion policies are also coming forward, which as the team kind of weighed the pros and cons, it was not wanting to shift too far in a direction that then we might move from. And so this felt like a good place for today, probably with the exception of should everything just be all electric. So there's sort of the parking part, and then there's the, do we want to have compromise on mixed fuel vehicles?
Sure. I'll go back to the piece about the overcrowding and the no exceptions that you mentioned earlier. Even with affordable housing developments, and that concerns me because those are two different populations, right? We know that most of the folks who are going to go into affordable housing may not have the same resources as everybody else, and so I don't think that we should treat everything the same. It is not equal. The development that we're building here in the downtown area, it's not going to be all affordable housing. We know that, right? So why wouldn't we make exceptions for affordable housing so that those folks could also, we can bring them forward slowly, right? You already mentioned that there may be some lack of use at some of these sites, and maybe with new technology, you won't, for whatever, I don't know what the new technology would be that would replace this. I don't venture to pretend to know, but I think there could be exceptions to the rule, and I see affordable housing as one of those. So I hope that you can take that into consideration when we come back next week.
Certainly. I think, Ken, what is the cost to run the conduit just to make it ready to be upgraded at another time for affordable housing?
So for EV capable, the cost per space is between $800 and $1,000, according to the cost studies that we've seen.
You said $800
to $1,000 to do EV capable. If we were looking at a retrofit situation in the future, then we'd be looking at over $6,000 per space.
So we think part of the question is how much parking should there be there, of course. But also, the cost of a used electric vehicle is very affordable. And so we do think it presents an opportunity for our lower income community to do a one-time purchase of an affordable used vehicle and then not really have significant operational costs.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just thinking about how to bring all of our families, how to move them forward. And I appreciate that under Climate Smart, you have other features to help convert maybe some appliances. And I know sooner or later, I think we're going to have the water heaters electrified. And then that'll target the rest of us, right? We're not going to live in these new developments downtown, or at least I won't. But I'll do my part. Well, I would disqualify myself from living in District 8, but I think it's everybody has to do their parts, right? Everybody has to do their part, and I'm excited about these REACH codes for new development. But I think there's a lot of residents that can do their part, and I think collectively we're all going to pull together. But I know that's a little bit part of like what clean energy is doing in their department, right? And we'll be patient with that because I know they're on their 7th month of operations. But we're excited and we're ready for this. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Diep?
We've kind of been through this through previous committees, and it's come before in different iterations, and all the questions I've had will just be repeating, so I won't ask them again. But I'm glad to see that the city is moving in this direction, and I'm also getting kind of feedback from both sides, from the speakers here, of course, who I get all your emails, and then of course some of the folks in the development community with concerns of rising costs and all that. So I am looking into it, and I'm sure we'll have to vote tomorrow, so we'll keep it in suspense. Or next week. All right, thanks.
Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, staff, for your hard work. I know there's been a lot that's gone into this, and certainly we're getting a lot of feedback here as we get to the final vote next week. But I really want to appreciate the work gone into this. I too have heard from another committee in regards to input and seeing how this is moving, and so I just interested in a couple things. I wanted to see, and the initial reaction is something like the alternative one, right? But then, right, diving a little deeper and then understanding where and how that could affect things. I heard from a comment today, individuals saying, hey, we're out there building all electric buildings. I know that Adobe, right, made a big splash in an announcement with their Tower 4 being all electric. So it's happening, right? So, and what I get from this alternative and why it seems like this may not be the right time to do that, I'm kind of curious when, based on your expertise, when do you feel would be the right time, if not now?
Ken, maybe talk a little bit about the conversations that you had that kind of helped land us here, and then how the numbers are working to provide different motivations.
Yeah, so that I think we left gas on the table here primarily for one setting, which is a high-rise residential that has a central water heating system. Gas is perhaps more economical right now for that purpose, although we have heard from multiple stakeholders that the heat pump water heater systems of that scale are now starting to emerge. It seemed like we were a little bit on a bubble right now in time. To your question, though, I think there's no reason to believe we couldn't get out of gas altogether by the next code cycle.
Okay, so you're feeling then, and we're just a couple years away, maybe from
yeah, the
2020.
No, the next code would go into effect after this one would go into effect January 1st, 2023.
23.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's at least comforting to hear that, because that's right. I'm sensing we've had development out there happening right now, and I do think there could be some alternatives if you're talking about specifically one type of development like a high rise, which unfortunately we recognize is uniquely challenging in our city when we talk about where most of those high rises are happening, which, well, at the moment, all of them until we can maybe get something in Santana Row. But at the moment, all downtown with a high water table and a low ceiling because of our flight path. And so unique challenges that we may have here that other big cities don't have. And I recognize that. But at the same time, then looking at other types of development like single family homes and something that we recognize, right? That's not the direction of our city anymore to be building single family homes. It could be a place where we achieve all electric, right? We put those sort of requirements in place. And I'm in conversations with the mayor. I know that he's also very interested in some of these, directions, and we'll have that opportunity next week, I think, to put forth some maybe further reach codes in some of that context. And so I'm, that's where I'm interested as well. I did have a question in regards to the affordable housing sort of component. And I'm torn here because I hear, well, for one, I think with what you're recommending, with some of that upfront cost, much cheaper, right, to at least get it ready, EV ready, rather than do that in the future. And where I have an issue is that if we assume somehow that we should exempt the low-income housing, one, I guess, up front to save the money, but two, where I'm thinking then is, well, then they're never going to get there if we don't make them EV ready. So then we're saying for low-income housing, and when we build these new housings developments, right, these are 50 to 100-year type developments, at least what we're hoping out of, right? So we're saying that the individuals in these communities where we're building the low-income housing then are really never going to have that opportunity to switch over and transition over. So I get the cost savings up front, but in my mind, I would rather try to find a way to help incentivize. And so I wanted to see, Wascott, if you could come down. Because I know you were speaking about this, and a couple individuals spoke in regards to exemptions for the low-income and permanent supportive housing and developments that we know we need so much. Right? And so I kind of wanted to just hear your thoughts in that regards, that are we sort of then losing an opportunity if we exempt the low-income housing and then they end up going with gas, or maybe they're not going EV ready? So I wanted to see your thoughts on that, and are you supporting sort of at least the staff recommendation on EV ready, which would be at least a little bit more slight increase up front, or are you saying from SV at Home's perspective it's completely exempt the low-income housing because we don't want any dollar amount of added cost up front?
Right. Excellent question, Councilmember. So we actually had the opportunity to talk with staff last Friday, and so they actually made this exact mention, and they did recognize this as an equity issue, and as in given the opportunity of folks in different income categories to look into possibly electric vehicles one day, and they started talking about the used EV market should be coming up soon as electric vehicles start to get older and begin to be resold. In my comments, I was mentioning deeper levels of affordability. Specifically, we're talking permanent supportive housing, and we're talking folks that are, formerly homeless, couch surfing in and out of those situations, that are more likely utilizing mass transit or other forms of transportation. And we think those are prime opportunities to have those sort of exemptions, because in general, they're not looking to be utilizing personal vehicles. So I think in those kind of 50-60% AMI, we are supportive of having still EV requirements so that they could look into that one day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. That's it for my question. Thanks, Bhaskar. So I do think that this really does play into the sort of the required parking spaces, right, and what type of development we're talking about. And I think it can be solved at that level versus here. Because I'd rather have a stronger reach code, and then say for permanent supportive housing developments, right, we don't impose a lot of parking, because for one, we shouldn't be, and we're not today, right? Unfortunately, the very first permanent supportive housings, the Second Street Studios, right, has way too much parking. and was built that way, and already is right being determined. I think it's somewhere like 60 to 80% of it is not being used, and so you know, that's where I think we need to solve this issue is really lowering the threshold, because I would agree that we already know that a number of these individuals are not driving today, and that housing is catering to that individual. And as well, we're attempting to build a lot of these in and around transit, and then provide transit passes as well for these individuals. So I really would like to solve that there, right? And then it's not an issue if you have, you know, a large development, you only have 20 parking spaces, right? Then it's not so much of a big cost burden up front. And for those parking spaces, what we do see for the individuals that may drive, or at times it's the staff that are there, right? Some staff parking spaces. It would be great if you had a staff coming and there was an EV charging station and they charge it at work during the day, right? Versus the whole plug-in at home and that issue. So, but at the same time, I do understand that, right, that maybe that narrow group of the permanent supportive housing. I definitely don't want to personally exempt out just all affordable housing. I would rather have an equitable playing field and then find a way to the city to be able to incentivize or reimburse potentially some of these affordable housing developments if we're going to have a higher reach code and ask for at least EV ready on these parking spaces. So I think I'll rest there for my comments for today. I will mention, because Dave Poschel did not get to finish, but he did hand out the little flyer here. But Friday, September 20th, from 4 to 5 p.m., right out front of City Hall here, there'll be youth coming to host Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action Rally. And my office is proudly helping to sponsor the use of the City Hall space. And so, unfortunately, a couple of us, including Councilmember Davis and I, will potentially be sitting in here for a VTA meeting while that's going on, but we invite others to join. So there's your plug, Dave.
Councilmember Esparza.
Yes, I actually wanted to talk about the same thing, which is affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. So the city's second permanent supportive housing development will go on Center Road in District 7. It's actually quite large, and it is sort of the model that it's built on is heavy partnership and case management, nonprofit partners coming in. So there is, in my mind, room to have electrification there, because so much of the auto traffic and parking, at least a few reliable spots could be EV, and it will be sort of staff heavy with different organizations there that will be there day in and day out, and 24 hours, in fact. So it does kind of make sense to kind of push a little bit, particularly as large organizations that will be partnering on some of these developments are looking at their fleets, right, and converting, and many of them already have. And so I actually think that that's something that should be within our plan. And also, somebody that has a number of affordable housing developments in her district, I think it does make sense, even, you know, in the ones where there's sort of formerly homeless. I'm thinking of like Markham Plaza, which isn't technically, it wasn't built as permanent supportive housing, but it essentially is permanent supportive housing. Again, same thing, staff heavy, a lot of organizations coming in and out that could utilize that parking. And for residential affordable housing, I think if we can sort of build it and give people the opportunity, since these are going to be long-term developments, it does make sense. It's not all that affordable to buy an electric car. I found the Ford Focus is about $20,000 base. You know, at 5% interest rate, it would be $377 a month car payment, which isn't chump change, especially if you're low income. So it's not all that super affordable, but there's starting to be a growing secondhand market nowadays. So while this isn't a right now thing, this is definitely more of a short-term reality than it is a long-term reality. So with that, oh wait, you're going to speak? All right, you speak and you can make the motion if you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff for not only the presentation, but all the work and outreach that you've done on this and going through multiple drafts and multiple committees. I really appreciate it. It's a big deal, so it was required. It was necessary to do all this, and I appreciate all that work. I'm trying to get. Thank you. I just want to understand the timing. So the REACH code goes into place January 1st, 2020. This is my first go around with new codes. What does that mean? Which projects are affected? How far along in the pipeline are the projects impacted with a new code on January 1st?
Thanks for the question. So basically, it's based on building application submitted to building division. So the code will be effective. All California codes, including REACH codes, will be effective on January 1st, 2020. Therefore, building submittal submitted on January 1st must comply with this new ordinance.
Okay, so if they're already, just want to clarify, so if they're already in the pipeline, they've gone through their application, but they haven't pulled a permit yet.
No, for example, when you say pipeline, that means, let's say a project is going through a planning entitlement process.
Right.
That's a application entitlement process, but not necessarily submit for a building application.
Okay.
So there's two different types of application. In order to comply with or submit prior to going this new code to be effective, they must submit building permit application to building division on last day would be December 31st of 2019. Then they could stay with current code. But if they submit day after, which is January 1st, 2020, they must comply with a all adopted ordinance, including REACH code.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
And another, just for your information, that we are trying to go with this REACH code at this time is because the California Energy Commission requires to review cost effectiveness study that we submitted, the numbers, and also they need to have a 60-day comment period for public to make comments on. Therefore, this timing is somewhat critical that we have to submit to California Energy Commission sometime next week or so.
To still make the January 1st implementation
That's correct.
date, right?
Right.
Okay. And so do we have, this is coming to council next week, Tuesday, then we will submit to the state. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then the comment period, does it come back to council then for a final adoption after that comment period?
No. So it will be adopted, the comment will be addressed by the California Energy Commission, and if there are some significant comment that would affect the adoption for City of San Jose, presumably they will contact the city and go from there. But I haven't heard anything like that in previous adaptation.
And I would just add that that what we're putting forward is based on the state's own cost effectiveness guidelines, so there should be no issue in that sense.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I got that. I'm a little bit confused about a couple of things, and so I'm going to ask some clarifying questions. So I've heard the cost of an all-electric building is lower. It sounds like, which I've worked out now through however many hours we've been doing this, the issue is really for the builders that want to continue to do the gas. So it's running the gas line that's the most expensive thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all electric is the cheapest, and they know that right now, right?
Yeah, we're seeing examples, as you heard some of the speakers allude to. We're seeing that without a code driver in terms of the development across the street. They do have a gas central boiler system, but they've chosen voluntarily to electrify everything else in the residential units there.
Okay, so the sort of the remaining issue is about, it's a preference for wanting to have gas run to all the units is it mostly for lifestyle, or is it mostly for cost of heating and water heating?
We're hearing mostly for to sell a quote-unquote high-end unit. Gas range helps do that. We're certainly dealing with some awareness issues in terms of where electric cooking is today. It's not mom and dad's old orange coil that takes forever to heat up, and I'm sitting next to a proud induction stove owner who can boil water in 90 seconds. So it's kind of getting that out there. We have even an induction stove checkout program through the department to help people take a unit home, try it out, and see how quick it is. We'll get you signed up.
I want to get signed up. Yes, I did not know about this. We've actually been talking about it because of the REACH code. We've been talking about it in the office. So I think it's a really good addition to something, to how we can promote the Good Life 2.0 is
Right.
getting more and more education out about this.
We'll get you the stove, and we're available for breakfast tomorrow.
Awesome. I went home and I tested my pans. Someone said, well, if it's magnetic on the bottom, it'll work, right? Is that right?
Yes, and our checkout
Mine are
kit comes
magnetic.
with a magnet, so you can check the pans that way too.
I already checked them. I'm good.
If
Cool.
I may, council member, so current construction trend for example, like high-rise buildings, all inside the unit is all electric cooling, heating, stove and dryer and so on. But I think one item is like utilizing central boiler or even boiler for each floor or multiple floors. The technology is not quite there yet to make it more economical. So natural gas would be most efficient component at this time. So there is some hindrance from developers' point of view that when they do a high rise, they like to have that option. That's why we have the mixed fuel option, making a building more efficient, some of like a trade-offs. For example, another example would be for single-family homes is water heater is also predominant. About 10 to 20% we are seeing heat pump water heater, which is electricity, but 80% is still people like to use water heater. Maybe it's more economical at this point. But as we move forward, we'll see a lot more consumable type of heat pump water heater, which will be more economical as we go forward.
Is that
So-
the tankless water heater? Is that what you're
Well,
talking
that's
about, the heat pump? Or is that something separate?
That's something separate.
Okay. So this is a new concept for me.
So tankless water heater will be also utilizing gas.
Oh, it does?
There are both versions. There are electric and gas tankless versions. The heat pump water heater looks very much like your gas water heater does. It's a vertical cylindrical tank. Instead of a gas flame, though, it uses ambient air temperature in the garage typically don't ask me how it works, but it's supposed to be very efficient, and I've heard it described as the same way your refrigerator cools down. The heat pump would take air from the outside and apply it to the water and concentrate that heat.
Okay, thank you. Can you also revisit the 8 amps per space issue? We've gotten multiple letters about that being problematic, and you had started to talk a little bit about it, and frankly, I'm going to need a little more.
Sure. So typically, I think what we have in there for a defined EV-ready space right now is as a 32 amp circuit, and that would be similar to what I have in my garage that I can plug a level 2 charger into and charge my car in a certain amount of time. 8 amps, that requirement is basically a way of increasing the electric service at the development without requiring enough electric service for all those potentially EV-ready stalls to power the charging unit at that level right away. So it gets you part of the way there to when you start to have that demand in a multifamily complex, perhaps for more charging. The 8 amps would be there. It would provide a start to getting multiple vehicles charged. You'd use a load management system that again would prioritize cars based on how low their charge is. If you started to have a lot more demand on that system, you would probably need to upgrade your electric service at that point. But we're thinking that's less of a lift from where we get you to than if you were starting from scratch.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell me what level 2 charging, I forget these terms, I hear them and forget what they exactly
Sure.
mean.
Level 1 would basically be an extension cord we would plug into a regular socket here and run that to a car charger unit. It would take quite some time. I think, Sean, you can probably hit the time requirements.
24 to 36 hours to go from 0 to a full charge on a typical EV, longer for something like a Tesla with an extended range.
Okay, and then level 2?
Level 2 is based on 240 volts instead of the 110 like you have in your standard outlet. 240 is what your stove uses, it's what electric water heaters use, other large loads, and that, there are multiple amperage available for that. But for the standard level 2 charger, you're talking about going from 0 to 100% in 4 to 8 hours, depending on the range of the battery and the charger that's being utilized. And again, that's 0 to 100. Very few people let their batteries get that low.
Okay, and then, so at Santana Row, they have level 3 chargers because they say you can go, like, have dinner and come back and it'll be charged.
So level 3 chargers do not use alternating current, which is what we have in most of our buildings. They use direct current. So they basically go dump power straight into the battery. I believe it's 600 volts, very high amperage, and they are capable of charging from 0 to 80% in about 20 to 30 minutes. And we don't have level 3 requirements in the San Jose draft. Those are usually commercial paid for chargers.
Right, got it. Just I had heard of something faster than that, so I wanted to make sure I remembered
It's also called
correctly.
DC fast charging. I think that's the more common word for it rather than level 3.
Okay, got it. Thank you, that's helpful. So there was on the stakeholder outreach, there was a comment about the ability of the grid infrastructure to handle electrification. And Lori, since you're here, can you address that issue?
Sure, I'm Lori Mitchell. I'm the Director of Community Energy, and I'd be happy to answer that. So, essentially that's going to be site specific for each development. So currently on the distribution system, PG&E has 2 electric service rules that guide that. It's Electric Service Rule 15 and 16. And so if there's a new service connection that's needed by a developer, typically the developer, the owner, pays for that. If there are upgrades to the distribution system, that's typically cost shared by the utility. So there's some cost allocation factors that are applied that can offset the cost of those distribution infrastructure upgrades depending on what additional load and revenue that the utility expects. And then in terms of the transmission system, the CAISO has both a short and a long-term planning process where they evaluate needs on the transmission system and new capacity is built if needed.
Thank you. And so as I get for our REACH codes, our new building requirements, it's going to be more incremental because obviously we have more potential retrofits than we have new buildings coming online. But in terms of our climate smart plan, what does that mean for retrofitting to all electric for the whole city based on our goals? How will we work on the infrastructure issue?
So,
Go ahead.
So I'll let you fill in, but just my 2 cents. I think it's site specific. I also think it's important to point out that these REACH codes also adopt, the Title 24 building standards, and so it also assumes that these buildings are much more efficient. So I wouldn't expect that it necessarily means all of PG&E's distribution infrastructure needs to be upgraded. I don't expect that would be the result of this. For example, the heat pumps, that's a very efficient technology that warm climates can take advantage of, and that is a way that these buildings can reduce both their water heating and also their cooling and space heating needs. And so, so yes, I wouldn't expect, but that being said, I think some buildings might need infrastructure upgrades, and so that would be guided by Rule 15 and 16.
And that's a cost sharing if I heard you correctly, that's a cost sharing between PG&E and the developer of that site?
Yeah, so first what PG&E does, they get the application and they'll do an engineering study and they will determine two things. So one, they'll determine if there's a new service connection. So that's from wherever the distribution is. Usually it's an overhead line. It might be an underground line. That service connection to the distribution wires is typically borne by the owner. If there are upgrades to the distribution system, like say the distribution system that currently serves them needs to be increased, that's cost shared by the utility.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And I don't know, this might be a question for you, Carrie. I think that's it, Lori. What is our climate smart goal for EVs?
So our goal is that 6 out of 10 trips will be in an electric vehicle.
By
2030?
Okay. So if we say 60% of the trips, that doesn't necessarily mean 60% of the vehicles that exist in the city, just that we're more of your local trips, for example, you might use your EV or you might use an EV. But you may still have a gas car for road trips.
For camping and boating. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big shift for us, right? I mean, as Ken said, there's 3% of the vehicles now, so we're looking at a pretty rapid deployment.
Okay. Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Perales that if we have these goals, we have to make sure the infrastructure is going to be in place, because what gets built now or what gets built in the next 5 years, we hope is going to be around by the time we have these goals to meet, right? And so I was really disappointed, honestly, when we got to the city comparison, and I can't remember which slide that is on, about building electrification. I think it's slide, oh, I don't have a number on here, 2020?
You want to go back to it?
And so ours is the proposed. Is everyone else already, are the blue dots the adopted? Like they've been adopted already?
So they have in some regards, but Ken, maybe talk specifically to Berkeley.
Yeah, so Berkeley and some of the East Bay cities have done the natural gas ban. I don't totally understand their process, because they still are, when we talked to them last week, we're still in the process of developing a REACH code itself. So the gas ban was sort of I think, limited in scope to low-rise residential, if I'm not mistaken. And then they need to go do a REACH code for the remainder of their building stock. Some of the cities you see up there are using what's kind of been called the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Model Code as what they're considering, but Silicon Valley Clean Energy is not the entity that will decide that. All those cities have to go back to their individual councils and adopt something. So you could see movement there in terms of what they bring, or they could stick with that.
So is that the electric requirement for specific appliances? Is that sort of that category that you're talking about?
Menlo Park did the gas exception for stoves and fireplaces. The other ones would have the higher compliance margins that you've heard talked about, and a higher EV requirement.
And the higher compliance margins, is that closer to our first draft?
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting about this chart, though, is that this is just building electrification. So as Ken mentioned, it's not necessarily talking about EV and all the other components. And Berkeley's still looking to develop and get a REACH code approved, and then the Silicon Valley model ordinance hasn't been adopted by anyone else yet. So I mean, what we were trying to depict here was just the building component, not where all REACH codes are.
Thank you. That's helpful, because that.
And I think it's spelled out a little bit more in attachment A to the staff report.
Okay.
You can get a little bit better feel for where cities are at. Some of them are behind us timing-wise, and their reach codes won't go into effect till perhaps March of next year.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's see.
And I would also add, some of those cities might not have some of the high-rise concerns that we have as well.
Sure. In fact, a lot of them don't. And then I noticed that we added electrification ready to our new proposal, and the original draft for mixed fuel did not have electrification ready requirements. Why not?
We looked at that as a cost concern, but then when we compromised a little bit on the compliance margins, we wanted to add that back in to kind of strengthen that electrification signal in a different way. So the thinking there was, if you're going to be required to put in all those specialized outlets for electric water heating, electric stove, and so forth, even if you're going to use gas equipment, that you might reconsider and decide to just use electric equipment and not have that cost kind of be there up front, but deferred in terms of usefulness for many years.
And I would add, similar to the EV kind of readiness component, then someone would have to pay for that cost later. If you put in a gas stove and the outlet wasn't there for electric, somebody would have to bear that cost. So we just fully loaded it.
Right, and it's much easier to do it when you have new build. I completely agree with that. The only other, I just want to make sure I completely understand the whole, I think it was back a couple more slides. To slide 18, the cost of an all-electric building versus mixed fuel building. So we had talked about the build cost is less, but what we're looking at here, given current electric and gas costs, right?
Right.
The life cycle is still actually more for single family and low-rise multifamily. Why is an office? Okay, where is high-rise? We didn't have that in this. Where is that in terms of the life cycle cost?
Sean, you could add on to this, but basically state do not have a study done for high-rise buildings at this point.
Okay, so this is this is from the state?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did they do and I'm sorry if I missed this somewhere, did they do a kind of a break-even cost, like how much more gas would have to go up to make it break even over the life cycle?
They didn't do a formal analysis of that, no.
Okay. And then can we go back one more slide, 17? I have to tell you, in terms of the costs of a REACH code mixed fuel building over the 2019 base code, can you talk a little bit about, and maybe this is just a similar, sort of like the flip side of the next slide, but I did not understand the all-electric versus the second chunk of columns.
Sure, this table has proved challenging. So for the all-electric building, there's effectively no REACH code for that. I mean, you're just going to meet base code, and that's why those numbers are showed as 0, because you don't have any added cost for code compliance. For the mixed fuel, though, we have those compliance margins that are in there. And in order to meet those, you're going to have to go above code and therefore add more efficiencies, for example, than what the state requires in order to meet our REACH requirements. And that adds the cost that you see there.
And I think that's where we heard from the public that, if the average cost of a house is $600,000, that $5,000 may or may not be meaningful.
Okay.
Also, more efficient means that you will be reducing greenhouse gas. There will be emission inside the house or building.
Okay, so what that practically means, I just want to make sure I completely understand this the mixed fuel option and how a builder might decide between building an all-electric or a mixed fuel. So if they decide to run gas to the stove, for example, or run gas to the boiler, as you were talking about, that means they have to have more energy efficient appliances in the units to make up for that. So it doesn't get all the way to our zero net energy buildings, right?
Right. So we're saying that if you do all electric, you're going to get the city GHG savings of X. If you keep fossil fuel in the building, then you're going to have to give us those savings in a different way, and that could be window glazing, window size, all those different efficiencies that would increase efficiency for that setting in order to get to our end goal, which is GHG reduction.
Okay, and so as it stands right now for the proposed mixed fuel and our efficiency requirements, do we actually get to the same GHG reduction as all electric? What we tried to do was make these GHG emission neutral, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they?
I don't think we have that analysis, do we?
So, no, they're not. So the mixed fuel building will still have more greenhouse gas emissions than an all-electric building. And that's due primarily to the fact that by 2021, San Jose's grid is going to be completely carbon-free. But these mixed fuel buildings, while their electricity will be carbon-free, the gas that they consume will still be, have associated carbon emissions with them. And so the amount of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from a mixed fuel building will not equal what we see from going to all electric, and that's really because of San Jose's clean energy goals that are rapidly approaching.
Okay. Do we know what percentage would make it? I mean, it sounds like it won't, because if it's all electric, we have GHG free, and you can't get to that without while burning natural gas, right?
Yeah, you can't get to it with a mixed fuel building.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to revisiting this issue again next week, as I'm sure you all do, and I'm sure everyone in the audience will also be there. So I will entertain a motion, and if there is any additional direction for staff, please feel free.
Move to approve. Will you add the revisiting with the group and the stakeholders who attended? Yes, and including revisiting the outreach.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries. We will move on to open forum. We have a couple of cards. Tessa Woodmansee.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to turn this. Sorry. All right, good. So basically, my open forum in regards to the electric grid, just to talk about that one last time, is that we do need to get out of our cars, and that in the true requirements of the Paris Climate Accord to bring us to 1.5, we have to reduce 50% in the next 10 years. So it's still the infrastructure of going all electric vehicles is a big demand on our electric system that we don't have the capability for, because we have to reduce 50%, and what that looks like is no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no jobs. Doesn't mean there's no work, lots of work, but no jobs and no money. So that's what 50% looks like. And so we have to rethink about the electrification of our car infrastructure because of all the problems we have with the cars, killing us, maiming us, as well as we do not have that infrastructure to go that way. We need to go towards a bicycle infrastructure and mass transit. That is what is sustainable. And then the issue that I want to talk about is this issue of our building code. And our neighborhood is requiring an agenda item of the general plan change in our neighborhood, in our community. And you all talk about it very well, that you have this general plan amendment to keep industrial. Well, this is really affecting our neighborhood, as the west side of Stockton that originally was to go residential, you are changing the general plan and have said that it needs to go industrial. We got no notification of that. We didn't get a card from you. So the process of changing the general plan has destroyed our neighborhood, and their plan is to put a 5-story hotel in our community. Under climate emergency and under a housing crisis, we do not need a 5-story hotel at the property line on Stockton Avenue in Shealy.
Thank
So we're
you.
demanding a
Nikita Sinha?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Nikita Sinha. I'm newly appointed as the Walk San Jose program manager with California Walks. Mostly just wanted to introduce myself, say I'm looking forward to meeting all of you and working with you on Vision Zero. And I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the string of hit and run fatalities we saw in late August, early September. Fernando Alvarez was killed in District 3 while walking at 4th and San Fernando on August 22nd. Jesus Orozco Plancarte was killed in District 5 while biking at Story and Jackson on August 29th. And an unnamed victim was killed in District 7 while walking at Story and Felipe on September 3rd. These deaths are tragic and unacceptable, and indicate that we need to double down on Vision Zero and really start dedicating our time and our resources to making sure that our streets are safe for everybody in order for San Jose to become, you know, a safe and livable city. So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you and working with this, and I hope you'll join me on November 17th on World Day of Remembrance, which is a day to honor and remember victims who are lost while walking and biking. And I'll send an email out with follow-up information so that you'll all have that and not have to just write it down right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that topic, September is Rail Safety Month, and VTA would like me to remind you that you cannot beat a train. You can go to vta.org/safety for more information, and that is directed at bicyclists and pedestrians. And this meeting is adjourned.